Nope. That's better.
I don't think I've I don't think I've ever been to this class. They're all out at the ranch, I guess,
Could be.
getting lunch ready for us.
Could be.
Yeah. So,
We could just we've been in a living room with this little group. Sit around together.
so this is a challenge, but find someone that you did not come to church with in the same car this morning. If you don't know first names, swap first names, and tell what was the most creative costume that showed up at your front door last night.
Or maybe that's really easy.
No one came.
What's that?
No one came to her house because it's a long drive.
I see there.
Nobody.
I see there used to, not anymore.
What did we have, Jen? 30 some?
31.
31.
What's yours?
We had waves in the 30s.
Oh, did you?
3 Sam's bags. Yeah.
Wow. Jennifer had a bowl like this, and there's some left. But so if you had kids or even adults show up, what was the most interesting costume you saw? And we'll start with Jennifer.
Boy, I'm trying to think. There were a number of kids that had these inflatable dinosaur suits. They must have had a little fan
Yeah.
with the little thing that inflated the dinosaur suit. So they were like waddling with these big inflatable like dinosaur outfits. There's like 3 of them.
Yeah.
Cute.
How about you, Bobby?
I was asking a lot of them, what are you dressed up as? I couldn't tell, And one of them had like makeup, looked like dark sunken eyes, but dressed like the princess. And I'm like, so what are you? She said, I'm a creepy princess.
A creepy princess. Yeah. Anybody else?
I asked my masseuse what she was going as. She says, well, I'm not sure. Last year, I bought a black slip and wrote Freud on it. I was a Freudian slip.
Oh, anybody else? Anybody else?
Oh, that's cute.
So one of them that these kids were, just really had gone to dressing to the T's to come. But one was this kid that had on a black outfit with lights on it.
Oh, yeah.
Bobby would know how you do all that, but
It was almost like rope lights. So when he stood like this, he looked like a stick, like you draw a stick figure with the head and body and 2 arms. So it was just like the lines. So he looked like a little stick person walking around.
yeah,
Cute.
when it wasn't so impressive when he was at the front door, but when they got out beyond the lights in the front yard, this guy was the star. It was fun. Jennifer is a generous candy giver away person. Handfuls going into each bag.
Well, Rob overbuys, so I try to give it away. That's what I'm doing.
That's a good excuse for giving all our candy away, Jen.
Not bad.
He keeps
Yeah.
more hope that some's left over.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, prayer requests, praise reports.
Well, for sure, Chuck and his family, the loss of Janice.
Yeah. I'm sure you all know or have heard that our friend and wonderful person, Janice, went to be with Jesus earlier this week. What a wonderful, kind, generous, thoughtful person, physician, mother, grandmother, kind, wonderful person. When my mom passed 20-some years ago now, I was with her. She had been in a nursing home for about a year, right here, McKendree, just down the road from here. And she reached the point where she had no balance anymore. She fell and broke a hip. And I talked to the staff and told them to put her to bed, keep her comfortable, feed her as long as she'll take food, and give her fluids as long as she'll take fluids orally. But we're not going to go to the emergency department because she'll never walk again. Anyway, it was a loss of balance that got her where she was. And I said, give her fluids as long as she'll take them. And so they did. They put her to bed, and I visited her every day, but she was totally, I don't know if it's comatose is the right word, but she was not responsive for that week. I got up early on, this happened on Sunday night. I got up early on Friday morning, very early, 5 o'clock, and went to the nursing home. And it was obvious that she was breathing her last. Her blood pressure was dropping. And I said to her at that time, I said, Mom, the next thing you see will be the smile of Jesus. And I believe that for Janice too. It's the next thing you see. Let's pray. Father God, we thank you for life and breath and strength, the ability to think, to do, to be. And we thank you for being with us as we pass from one reality to another. And we know that regardless of where we are in our life story, you're there with us at the beginning, along the way, and at the end, and at the new beginning. And we thank you for hearing and answering prayer. In Jesus' name, amen. So we're back to Daniel, and we're done with the stories of Daniel. Daniel, who wouldn't eat the king's food and turned out to be the smartest one of the bunch. Daniel, whose friends were thrown into a brick kiln and came out without a smudge on their face. And the Daniel who went into the lion's den with a whole different country, leader, king, and came out of there. And those lions just treated him as though they were house cats while he was in that lion's den. But when he got out and the other guys got thrown in, they had a meal. It wasn't as though they weren't hungry when Daniel was in there, but God closed their mouths, and Daniel came out okay. So that's the first 6 chapters of Daniel, just in a shortened version. So today we start the last 6 chapters of Daniel, which is all about prophecy. Some of this prophecy we actually saw in the very beginning of Daniel's work, but this is an expansion and further explanation of all of that. So we're going to start with Daniel's 2 chapters today, Daniel 7 and 8, and I'm going to ask you to read the ones that you have been given this morning, and then we'll work our way through what's going on here. So let's start with Daniel 7, verses 1 through 3, and whoever has that one, read it for us loud enough, Chuck, so that everybody in the room can hear it, and then we'll go to the next one.
In Belshazzar's first year, as king of Babylon, Daniel had a dream. He saw visions as he was lying on his bed. Daniel wrote down what he had dreamed. Daniel said, I saw my vision at night. In the vision, the wind was blowing from all four directions. These winds made the sea very rough. I saw four huge animals come up from the sea. Each animal was different from the others.
Okay, that's 1 through 3. Four winds of heaven, churning up the great sea. There are some interpreters of this that say, well, that was the Mediterranean, because that's the closest thing to a sea that was around there. But other interpreters say, nah, that is all the people. That's what that water represents. Those four winds blowing across and turning the people into a storm. So different interpretations of the same thing. So let's continue with Daniel 7 verses 4 through 6.
The first beast was like a lion with eagle's wings. As I watched, its wings were pulled off, and it was left standing with its two hind feet on the ground, like a human being, and it was giving a human mind. Then I saw a second beast, and it looked like a bear. It was rearing up on one side, and it had three ribs in its mouth between its teeth. And I heard a voice saying to it, Get up, devour the flesh of many people. Then the third of these strange beasts appeared, and it looked like a leopard. It had four birds' wings on its back, and it had four heads. Great authority was given to this beast.
Okay, so the four winds were blowing, the seas were in chaos, and now Daniel sees these beasts coming along. So verses 7 and 8.
After this, I saw in the night visions, and behold, the fourth beast, dreadful and terrible, exceedingly strong. It had huge iron teeth. It was devouring, breaking in pieces, and trampling the city with its feet. It was different from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. I was considering the horns, and there was another horn, a little one, coming up among them, before whom three of the first horns were plucked out by the roots. And there in this horn were eyes, like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking pompous words.
So what we have just read has a name that it goes by, and that is apocalyptic. Anybody want to take a shot at defining that word apocalyptic? It's all right there. The apocalyptic is big to start with. It's huge, and you get that sense there. So what is seen in apocalyptic is huge. What is seen? We've just talked about some of it. What else do we think of when we say apocalyptic?
Oh, okay, I thought you were saying of the beast. There were horns of the beast, but I wouldn't think of that. No problem.
Yeah, so it's huge. There are beasts.
Katie, bar the door. It's coming. Scary.
Yeah, scary is a good term. Huge beasts, scary, and conflict. That's apocalyptic. And we'll be talking about that on through the day. Now, there's another couple of words that I want to go into here. Another one that we'll see here is eschatologic. Anybody want to take a shot at that one? What does eschatologic mean?
Historical meaning.
What's that?
Historical meaning.
Historical meaning, yes, but it's
Predicting.
Sequence.
end of time. End of time is eschatologic. So, Lee's right. It has to do with time, but mostly the end of time. And finally, one other word that is often used is this one. Enigmatic. How about a definition for that word?
Puzzling.
Hmm?
Puzzling?
A puzzle. Yeah. Puzzling. Any other words that
Mysterious,
mysterious?
difficult to interpret or understand.
Okay. So we've gotten as far now as these four beasts. Did we do 7 and 8 already? Okay, we did that one. So now 9 and 10. The scene changes in verses 9 and 10. So somebody has that in your hand.
I beheld till the thrones were cast down, and the Ancient of Days did sit. His garment was white as snow, and the hair of his head was like pure wool. His throne was like a fiery flame, and his wheels as burning fire. A fiery stream issued and came forth from before him. Thousands ministered unto him, and 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. The judgment was set, and the books were opened.
So, what is the change in scenery here? What is the backdrop that changed between verses 7 and 8 and 9 and headed for 9 and 10?
We're no longer in a giant ocean, we're in a giant courtroom.
Yeah. And where would that giant courtroom be? In the ultimate court. The end of times court.
Seat of
The-
the universe.
What's that?
Have the seat of the universe.
Yes. So, it tells us who was there, the Ancient of Days. Who's the Ancient of Days?
Jesus Christ. God.
This is God's courtroom. God's the judge. He's calling the shots at this one. And it's impressive. Clothing white as snow, hair of his head white like wool, throne flaming with fire, wheels all ablaze, a river of fire flowing from him. Thousands and thousands who were there, 10,000 times 10,000. The court was seated and the books were opened. So we come to verses 11 and 12.
And I kept looking because of the sound of the boastful words which the horn was speaking. I kept looking until the beast was slain, and its body was destroyed and given to burning fire. As for the rest of the beasts, their dominion was taken away, but an extension of life was granted to them for an appointed period of time. The Son of Man presented.
Okay, so the court rendered some sort of judgment and carried out that judgment. So verses 13 and 14.
In my vision at night, I looked, and there before me was like a son of man, coming with the clouds of heaven. He approached the Ancient Days and was led into his presence. He was given authority, glory, and sovereign power. All nations and people of every language worshiped him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion that will not pass away, and his kingdom is one that will never be destroyed.
So who does this have reference to? We've already spoken about the Ancient of Days, about God. Who is this?
Jesus.
There before me, this is verse 13, was one like a son of man coming with the clouds of heaven. Who does that sound like?
Jesus.
Jesus. He's given the throne, he's given judgment, passed on him from his Father, the Ancient of Days. How did well, let's read another. Let's get on into chapter, well, verse 15. Verse 15. How did Daniel take this vision? Now, Daniel is probably 70-ish, and it had previous visions, so visions were nothing new to him. But how did this one impact him?
He was disturbed.
Verse 13.
He's trouble.
Yeah. I continued to watch, and verse 13, in my vision at night, I looked and there was the Son of Man. Verse 15 tells us a little bit more about how Daniel felt at this point in the vision. Does someone have, I didn't include that one, I'll read it. I, Daniel, was troubled in spirit, and the visions that passed through my mind disturbed me. I approached one of those standing there and asked him the true meaning of all of this, and then he began to interpret it. We're going to go from there to Daniel 8, verses 1 through 4.
In the 3rd year of King Belshazzar's reign, I, Daniel, had a vision, after the one that had already appeared to me. In my vision, I saw myself in the citadel of Susa in the province of Elam. In the vision, I was beside the Ulai canal. I looked up, and there before me was a ram with 2 horns, standing beside the canal, and the horns were long. One of the horns was longer than the other one, but grew up later.
Okay, so we've heard something in a previous vision of Daniel's that might give us some clues as to who this ram with 2 horns, one bigger than the other one, that Daniel saw here. What entity might that have been? Now, you've got the answers.
Is that Greece?
What did I do with the rest of those? Here we go. You should all have gotten one of these. So at the top of the page is a chart that is in a commentary on Daniel authored by Zdravko Stefanovic. What's that?
You got more of the.
More of the
Back
papers.
seat back there.
Oh, back there, okay.
Oh,
Get more of the paper.
yeah, there are more.
I've got some extras over here.
Here we go.
Okay. What else?
So this gives you an idea of the message that is trying to come through in different ways in this book of Daniel. So this guy Stefanovic taught Bible in Adventist colleges for most of his career, and wrote a book entitled Wisdom to the Wise, a commentary on Daniel. So that's where that one came from. Now the one at the bottom takes that top one, the chart, and puts it together a little bit differently. One item stands out in this synopsis. Chapter 7 presents the most complete list of symbols in Daniel, yet it's the only chapter in which no symbol is clearly identified in the text by name from either world or church history. So in these other chapters, we know from the golden statue, that's Daniel 2, Daniel 7, is the one that we've just talked about that has these four beasts, the lion, the bear, the leopard, and finally the dreadful beast. And we're not into chapter 8 yet, but we're headed there because this message simply repeats itself from Daniel 2 to 7 to 8. And then those last two columns there add the names of the nations or powers that were represented. So what we were just told here is that these beasts in chapter 7, Daniel was given the symbols, but he was not given the identification of those symbols. But it's all, this is the second and third times that it's being done, and the others actually talk about the symbols. So let's go ahead. What did the ram with two horns represent? You should be able to tell from the chart. And
Medo-Persia.
Medo-Persia. So one horn was bigger than the other horn. The Medes started out against Babylon, and the Persians came in and took that over, and the Medes kind of disappeared from the scene. So let's go on now with Daniel 8, verses 5 through 8.
And as I was considering, suddenly a male goat came from the west, across the surface of the whole earth without touching the ground, and the goat had a notable horn between his eyes. Then he came to the ram that had two horns, which I had seen standing beside the river, and ran at him with furious power. And I saw him confronting the ram. He was moved with rage against him, attacked the ram, and broke his two horns. There was no power in the ram to withstand him, and he cast him down to the ground and trampled him, and there was no one that could deliver the ram from his hand. Therefore the male goat grew very great, but when he became strong, the large horn was broken, and in its place four notable ones came up towards the four winds of heaven.
So who was the goat with
Greece.
the horn who knocked out the Medes and Persians?
Greece.
Greece. And who put Greece on the map? Alexander the Great. So there's the goat. All right. That's 5 through 8. Someone read someone who has verses 9 through 12.
The message groups at 8 through 12. Then the billy goat swelled to an enormous size. At the height of its power, its immense horn broke off, and four other big horns sprouted in its place, pointing to the 4 points of the compass. And then from one of these big horns, another horn sprouted. It started small, but then grew to an enormous size, facing south and east toward lovely Palestine. The horn grew tall, reaching to the stars, the heavenly army, and threw some of the stars to the earth and stomped on them. It even dared to challenge the power of God, Prince of the celestial army. And then it threw out daily worship and desecrated the sanctuary as judgment against their sin. The holy people of God got the same treatment as the daily worship. The horn cast God's truth aside, high-handed. It took over everything and everyone.
Okay, we're going to skip the next few verses and go all the way down to verses 26 and 27 of chapter 8.
This vision about the 2,300 evenings and mornings is true, but none of these things will happen for a long time, so keep this vision a secret. Then I, Daniel, was overcome and lay sick for several days. Afterward, I got up and performed my duties for the king, but I was greatly troubled by the vision and could not understand it.
So, Daniel, it's hard to imagine Daniel after going through what he had been through for this number of years, and he dreams something in the middle of the night, and he says, I was exhausted, and I was ill for several days. Then I got up and went about the king's business. I was appalled by the vision. It was beyond understanding. What does this make you think of? Who might have been this last one that Daniel was talking about? Who says, if I read from verse 23, in the latter part of their reign, when rebels become completely wicked, a stern-faced king, a master of intrigue, will arise. He'll become very strong, but not by his own power. The identity of this person has been debated over centuries of Christian history. Who might it have been? Well, the kingdom of Greece, the goat with the big horn, kind of came apart when Alexander the Great died, very young, mid-30s. He drank too much, and it ended up taking his life. The Greece kingdom ended up being divided up between Alexander's 4 generals. Each of them took a piece of that. Somehow, one of the Grecian notables ended up having responsibility for the city of Jerusalem. His name was Antiochus, like Antioch with a U.S., Antiochus Epiphanes is his last name. And one of the commentators that I read said this: during his brief reign of 12 years, Antiochus very nearly exterminated the religion and the culture of the Jews. I mean, he took the temple down. He took away their religion. He took away any sort of ability they had to protect themselves or to be successful. Very nearly exterminated the religion and culture of the Jews. Now, we know, or we think we know, the extent from a timeline of these visions. Did they stop at the end of Greece? They don't, but we're going to talk about that more over the next couple of weeks. But the interpretations go on. So there are a variety of ways that that scholars have thought about these visions of Daniel. So, methods of interpretation. Methods of interpretation. And I'm going to use a different thing here. The first one is called preterist. Anybody want to take a shot at that one? What does that one mean? It means today. It means contemporary with the, not today back then. Contemporary with the author. So this would have been, if you looked at this today and you were in the preterist camp, you would say, yeah, this vision is what it is, but it really only has meaning in the preterist viewpoint. The second one, and we've just touched on it, is called futurist, and that's the end of time. So it's just the opposite of the preterist viewpoint. The third one is historicist. And that starts here and goes there. It's the whole span. People who take these visions of Daniel with whatever explanation they have, and there are those who says, yeah, it was all about Daniel's time. The futurist says, it's all about the end of time. The historicist says it's all of the above. They end up equaling historicist. So that's history from the writer to the end of time. There's a fourth one that's referred to as the idealist. And what the idealist authors, scholars say is that this really isn't so much about history. It's a lot more about principles, universal, timeless principles that apply throughout time. So, timeless. John's better at this than I am. Timeless principles. That's the idealist way of thinking about it. They say, forget all this stuff. It's just about, it's about principles, the way we ought to live. There's one more, and that's called the partial preterist, and the understanding of that is that it can have multiple interpretations. Take your pick, put them together, mix them up, pull them out, put them together in a way that suits you. That's the partial preterist. Now, Seventh-day Adventist history, as you know, came into being about 175, 80 years ago, something like that. And it came into being as a result of people thinking about these visions of Daniel and applying those visions to what would then have been called modern day, the 1840s, so almost 200 years ago. So here's a question that I've thought about a bit. And we were born in the 1840s, 1850s, 1860s. Is this stimulus, this beginning of the Adventist church, is it capable of fueling our future? Or does it run out of gas at some point? Is it preterist? How far does the historic one take us? What are we about today? Is it our prophetic identity sound enough to take us into the future? I remember my years at what is now Southern Adventist University. And then it was Southern Missionary College. I remember a particular week of prayer, and we, after the Friday evening meeting, we went out in front of the church there at Southern, and in small groups, we talked about what we had been hearing, and we prayed about it. And sometime in the next day or two, I called my parents at home and told them about what a moving experience that weekend had been for us. and I said, none of us think that we have more than 5 years before God wraps this thing up. Well, that was 60 years ago. And here we are. Here we are. How much influence do these memories of Daniel, his dreams, his visions, his illness at the very thoughts, how can those carry us? Does this unique aspect of our heritage have a finite life cycle? Are there other things that require our attention, our support, our unity as a body? How long can we sustain the notion that we are a people of destiny? How long can we sustain that? If the timbers of the prophetic platform weaken with age, if the timbers of the prophetic platform weaken with age, are we doomed to extinction as a people? What can sustain us? What might sustain us moving forward to the end of time? And maybe that's it. What do you think? Yes, Chris.
I think there's one thing that actually is unique about Adventism that is different from other churches. Most of what we talked about that we think is so unique is little stuff that, we're vegetarian, whatever you want to call it, that there's lots of little things.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at Adventists in its essence and what is truly unique, from a big time unique, is the understanding that there's not just a war in heaven, but it's over the character of who God is. You will not hear that in many churches. Once in a while you do, but that there are specific issues that have to be resolved. And saving you and me is actually not really that big of a part of his plan in relation to the global conflict, because you can't, saving you and me is such a minor part relative to securing the universe, that the security of the universe ultimately is what matters. Because if he saves us in a universe that is not secure for eternity, why are we going to even be there in the first place?
Yeah.
It would be a terrible place to be. So he has to do things in a certain manner, at a certain time, in a certain way that allows him to reveal who he truly was. For instance, the 23rd day prophecy, it talks about that, okay, all this bad stuff is going to happen, and he's going to allow terrible things to go on for a very long time, it sounds like to me, but then things will be restored. So if God doesn't know the future, or if he doesn't know any of this stuff, how is it that he can tell this in Daniel A and B? How is it that if we have freedom in the universe, he's giving people freedom for a very long time to do some terrible things.
Mm-hmm.
You say, well, why does God allow bad people to do bad things? Here you go, right here. He's allowing this to go on.
To play itself out.
Because things must be revealed in a way. God could not have just said, Satan, you're wrong. Angels, you got to trust me. I'm not going to give you any evidence. And so now God comes in human form, dies, shows the universe who he really was. They finally get it, and they say, you know what? We understand it.
Time's up. Lee, you had your hand up.
I just finished a book last week on the afterlife of Ellen White. And our church was in a very period, from 1920 to about 1970, we were in a period of certainty, and stuff was absolutes. Starting in about 70-ish, when I was finishing college, things were starting to get quite, and And I think when a movement starts out, you have to have some certainty to start a movement. But as the certainty has come into question, then we're kind of left to discover what the really important things are in life. I remember in U2 in school, we had to learn all these timelines. But in in Matthew there, it's not the people that know the timelines that are saved. It's those that are caring for the underserved. Like he said, showing that the character of God is not mean and angry, but it's willing to die on the cross for us so that we could save us. And in turn, we need to help those that are not near so privileged. So their little time that we have on this earth is better. But I remember learning this as this was, once you knew this, you were almost saved.
You had it. Yeah. Yes, Bobby.
Back to your original question of how does this survive long enough? I think the Bible shows us over and over, God would raise somebody up to retell the story. And they'd revive for a while and then they'd start waning. And then you'd have to raise somebody else up to retell the story. I think we have to find effective ways today to keep telling the story to existing people that know it as well as new people that don't know.
I love that. I think you're right. We need to be able to retell the story. Yeah. It's 11:15, and I know that many of you want to get out to Paradise Ranch, where it's windy and cold today. But it's paradise. So I close with this. Next week, we'll be going into chapters at least 9 and 10 in Daniel. Whether we'll get to 11 and 12, I'm not sure. But let me share this in closing. Some thoughts, and it kind of goes to what Chris had to say too. Life is lived in the present. Worshiping God and loving people is more important than predicting future. Maintain confidence in the timeful keeper and humility regarding the hands of the clock. Patiently await the outworking of God's sovereignty, and don't be surprised if we're taken by surprise. We worship an active God who, 1, reveals himself. Number 2, who acts in history. 3, works out his purposes in his own time and manner, judges nations, and will, in his own time, conclude the sin experience. Sin experience will be done. So, see you next week. Enjoy the Paradise Ranch.